All right, as we give some folks a few minutes to get started, we're going to I'm going to walk through a little bit of an introduction to the Campus County Connections webinar series, what we have and what we're going to cover today, and a little bit about just a plug for using WebEx, because as Cooperative Extension staff from across the state, we can be all using this tool to be sharing with colleagues and with folks that we're working with within the counties. So we'll get ready and get started. It looks like we have about 20 people attending right now. So once again, this is the Campus County Connection webinar series. We're going to focus today on Harvest New York, an initiative to grow New York's food and agricultural economy. We have Tristan Zuber, Dairy Food Extension Specialist, and Paul O'Connor, the State Extension Specialist, joining us today. So in a few minutes, they're going to introduce themselves. You guys want to just say hi?
Hello.
There you go.
Good morning.
We'll try to keep this light and keep you listening there on that end. So as I mentioned, this is just want to introduce a little bit of an event in WebEx. So some of you I know had a little bit of maybe a stumble in getting into today's webinar. If you're relatively new to WebEx, you may only have been using the Meeting Center in WebEx. WebEx has 3 different training opportunities for us to take advantage of. There's the Meeting Center that's intended for kind of meetings across a virtual table with colleagues and with stakeholders. There is a training center that really has some features built in to do some training. And then there's an event center that's really meant to kind of be a place where you can just spread the word and present on a particular topic. So we are using the Event Center for the Campus County Connection series. So if you are registered for another one, just know that when you go into cornell.webex.com, click on the Event Center, and you'll see our webinars listed there, and then you can join. I like to send people there directly rather than the link, because sometimes I've found that as the link changes, there's stress around having the right link, and I'd like for everybody to have access to those things. As I mentioned, Cornell supports WebEx, and you have the capability as cooperative extension educators to be using this tool as well. So I hope that as you attend webinars that you'll be thinking about how you can use this tool to reach out to colleagues, stakeholders, leaders, volunteers, whoever it is that you're working with. So we're going to get started. The Campus County Connection webinar series was dreamed by the Integrated Applied Research and Cooperative Extension team here on campus, and so this is the 2nd year of the series, and this year we've been focusing on a variety of different programs that may have some specialized funding, but are really intended to bring together applied research and cooperative extension. The whole intent of the webinar series is just to open your eyes maybe to something that is happening that may be fairly new that you might not know about, and you may have an interest or may have heard about it and want to know a little bit more. So we welcome today Tristan and Paul. So I would like to just start, if you guys would be willing to introduce yourselves a little bit more, especially you, Tristan. Everybody may know you, Paul, I'm just thinking, but and I can open a poll if you would like me to, Tristan, so just let me know.
Okay. Yeah, first poll. Okay, so my name is Tristan, and just a little bit of background about myself. I grew up outside of Batavia, New York, so I am New York born and raised. And I grew up on a dairy farm, so the dairy industry has always been interesting to me. And then I came to Cornell as an undergraduate, graduated in the field of food science, and before I came to Cornell, I had no idea what food science was. So coming here and discovering it, I kind of fell into it, and it's presented a ton of opportunities to me, and especially in the dairy foods industry. So after I graduated, I moved down to DC, and I worked with companies throughout the United States on exporting their products overseas. I worked for the U.S. Dairy Export Council. And then after that, I went into food ingredient sales for a little bit. And then I lived in Baltimore, but then opportunity came back in New York. I wanted to come back to New York. There was a ton that was happening in the dairy foods industry up here. There still is a ton that's happening in the dairy foods industry. So opportunity came to work with all these new companies that were coming to New York, and so here I am working for Cornell Cooperative Extension and supporting the growth of the dairy foods processing industry. So I've been really fortunate enough to fall into this role, and I'll be talking more about it throughout the presentation, talking a little bit about Greek yogurt. That's kind of a hot and sexy topic right now, so I'll talk more about that. Paul, go ahead.
So I'm Paul O'Connor, State Extension Specialist, one of 4 with Cornell Cooperative Extension Administration. I've been in Cooperative Extension, this is my 15th year, originally in Syracuse, Onondaga County as an urban forestry educator, then a natural resource team leader, the executive director of the operations in Onondaga, and for the past 6 years here in Extension Administration. And so as a State Extension Specialist, half of my role is dealing with working with boards of directors and executive directors in central and northern New York. And so people often want to know what that means, and I say, well, start in Binghamton, head north on 81 until you get to Watertown, take a right and stop when you get to Vermont. The other half of the job are more kind of special projects that have kind of statewide application, and that's where Harvest New York falls out. So that's why I'm here today to present with Tristan and talk about Harvest New York.
Okay, thanks. I really appreciate both of you being here. And I'm just going to, one thing that you didn't mention, Tristan, that Tristan mentioned to me earlier is she's a former 4-H'er also from Genesee County. Is that right?
It sure is. Yeah, I used to show cows. So.
Something that our audience may be interested in knowing. So I think we're starting with this set of slides. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, and we have a poll open right now. Just asking, Paul and Tristan are a little bit interested to know in our audience out there, which of the following areas describes you. So if you could just take a moment and follow up and answer that poll, and then we'll go ahead and close the poll and take a look at the responses together. All right, so people are still answering. All right, you have 15 more seconds to answer, and then it's going to close on you. The tricky thing with these. Okay, and we'll share the results there. Looks like you got a pretty decent audience from your Western New York group there, Tristan, as well as folks from across the state here. All right, great. Paul?
Well, so maybe I can start to introduce the way we thought we'd structure this conversation. Number one, it's a conversation. Please interrupt in the chat box with questions and comments as we go through this, and we'll stop and look to Celeste to interrupt us and answer those or respond, etc. But overall, we thought maybe I'd lead off and give some background about where did this thing Harvest New York come from. You know, start a kind of a broad perspective and then narrow it down, switch gears and have Tristan talk about the last couple of years in Harvest New York and where sort of things are at on behalf of the Harvest New York team in Western New York, and then switch back to me to say, oh, so where are we going as a system with Harvest New York moving forward? So in general, that's where we're headed. Maybe as we start to get into this, we could open up the, I forget which poll number it is, but the one that says, what would you like to know about?
It's open right now. So if folks have something that you would like to know about the Harvest New York program, go ahead and add that in. This poll is going to close, but you can continue to add things in the chat box. But, you know, as these guys said, we want to keep this interactive. So
we'll get going here then. So where did Harvest New York come from? Why did we, as a system, decide to go with this? Well, to be honest with you, when we first started, there was no thing called Harvest New York. That really came after the funding came. What we were seeing is that local associations were hearing from ag producers, and we were getting it through various program work teams and things here on campus, that the needs of ag producers in New York State was changing. That folks were consistently saying, you know, we've got great local associations, we've got regional ag teams in various parts of the state that are really producing, they're doing a great job of kind of servicing the ag industry in terms of how to produce a commodity. That wasn't the issue. That was always very, and continues to be extremely strong. But the new needs were that the markets were changing. So folks are saying, the markets are changing, how we sell our products are changing, the opportunities are there, but we're not sure how to connect to the opportunities. Do we export to China? Do we try and get into the green markets in New York City? Do we develop food hubs? All those types of needs were coming up. At the same time, we were hearing that there were some other trends within our internal system focused around the ideas of funding trends as well as the staffing trends within the cooperative extension system. We'll get into that a little more, but those were the basics of what has led to Harvest New York. So next slide, Celeste. So we started to look at the funding trends. And this graph is, I realize, a couple of years old, but I can talk about the last couple of years. As we looked back and say the last 10-year period, print's a little bit small, but in general, there's some clear trends that have been going on in funding of the system. If you take all the funding from counties and aggregate it across the state, in the last 5 or 6 years, that trend up until 2014, the trend was a loss of about $1 million per year. So it's a very consistent downward trend that county governments were just not in a position where they could give as much money due to all kinds of pressures on them. Cooperative extension is not a mandated effort, it's an unmandated effort, and so the funding to the system was decreasing by about $1 million a year. At the state level, well, I should go back and say that the good news is in 2014, it's looking like we're on a little bit above neutral, a little bit positive. Whether that'll become a trend or not, who knows, but that curve has turned up a little bit in 2014. The state funding has, and by state funding I mean County Law 224, the funding that comes from state government through CC administration out to each and every county, that funding has remained level. Now, it's a formula-based funding. It's never been appropriated more than 80% of the formula, and that's stayed pretty consistently, over a long period of time, way beyond 2004. But a level funding over a 10-year period is really a kind of a cut because the costs have increased. The federal level, you really don't see it on this graph. What you see is it's the purple line at the very bottom. The federal Smith-Lever funds that come to our system really has remained level in the last 10 years until 2010, and then it went down each of 2011 and 2012 due to federal sequestration. Good news there is it looks like it's going to plateau off, and that for the current year, we're not going to receive some of those cuts due to the way sequestration at a federal level has played out. So when you add all that up, cumulatively, CC associations have been able to find other resources to increase the total revenues, but if you look at it from a system perspective, funding has really been kind of coming down. So maybe we'll stop and look here.
Want to look at those?
Yeah, we'll look at the poll results since the poll is closed here, and then we'll go back to it. So, so several different areas that folks would like to know about. And lots of these are things that we really had already planned to address. The local foods end of it, where's the program going in the future and what has been done. How can various places in the state be connected to it. Those are all things that we really do plan to address during the presentation.
All right, next one.
Yep, next slide. So then beyond the funding trends, staffing trends, it's real clear in the last 10 years, back to really going back to the early 2000s, 3 or 4, real clear trends that from whatever perspectives, the kind of higher credentialed positions of resource educator, master's level positions and up that are out there developing programs, making the connections with campus and things, those have been on the decline. And the folks whose positions are all about delivering programs, those numbers have been on the increase. So not that either one of those is a bad thing, just the reality that that's what's been trending in our system. So then, as we looked at those kind of 3 elements, ag producers have needs with markets, funding trends, we need to generate some different revenue portfolio, and staffing, if we're going to be addressing needs that are really specialized, like the market trends with agriculture, we're going to need some staff that are at those higher level positions. Not that we don't need program delivery, we're getting more of those, but we need to add to that portfolio. As we looked at all of those, we thought, you know, it's time to go after 224B funding in the state. 224B within the state law says that the legislature and the governor can appropriate money to Cooperative Extension Administration, specifically to the Director of Extension, for use as regional programs. Why would it go to the Director of Extension? Because that it says regional, meaning across county boundaries. So since the trend has been that no matter what our efforts are, we haven't increased 224A, why don't we see if we can't increase 224B? And so out of that, it happened late in that particular budget year a couple of years ago. We ended up being successful. So in the past 2 years, we've gotten the state legislature to put in $300,000 per year in Western New York for a pilot that we have come to name Harvest New York. So a few of the key attributes of the pilot in the past few years, in no specific order here, but as we talk about it and talk about it with legislature, with elected officials in Albany, they really wanted to see that this would be a regional type approach, that it would help producers connect to the markets, but they had some very specific attributes. Number one, the money, even though it would go to the Director of Extension, cannot stay on campus. They did not want to see this money stay on campus. So, though the specialists are Cornell employees, Cornell University employees, they are housed in association offices in Western New York. And we'll show you a map in a little bit. Another key attribute is that they have to have a solid connection to faculty. And not just on paper, that it has to be real. And we'll show you what that looks like in a little bit. And then another one that's really not listed up here, but very, very clear, was that this funding cannot, the term that they use is supplant local funding. In other words, just because the state comes in, it can't be a state buyout program where the state funding is there, so the local county association says, all right, we don't need to fund that association anymore. No, 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 that can't happen. And so the way we've been able to structure it is as long as the county pays into one of the regional ag teams, then Harvest New York is available to that county. Doesn't mean that we can't help out a little bit here and there, but if, just using Tristan as an example, if there's a dairy manufacturing plant in a county that doesn't pay into Western New York, she can still offer some guidance, but you're not going to get the level of service that you're going to in other places. We had to be able to do that as one of the strings attached to the funding, and that string's not going away either. So next page, next slide. So as we started to go beyond just, you know, in general, here's this money to be used on a regional basis. What specifically? Well, as we started to talk to faculty and talk to producers, talk to folks in Western New York within Cooperative Extension, these three areas emerged. Tristan will talk in much more detail, but dairy food processing, dairy, which is the area that Tristan specializes in, dairy modernization, actually on farms, working on modernization, and then ag economic development, really meaning not dairy, other areas that have needs in connecting with markets, things like food hubs and produce auctions and the like. Those were the areas that really surfaced as needing some attention and ones that we could have impact in. Let me talk for just a second about impact, and we can go to the next slide. It's really crystal clear that there were two main metrics that elected officials, the folks providing the funding for Harvest New York, from the very beginning said, and that is, if you expect this funding to continue in the future, you've got to show impact in terms of jobs and economic investment. Now, everybody has different interpretations of that. The good news is they didn't define what they meant by jobs and economic investment. So what we've been able to define, and Tristan and her colleagues have done a phenomenal job in, is jobs can mean job growth, it can mean maintaining jobs. Those are the type of metrics within jobs, and economic investment doesn't mean it has to be bricks and mortar. It may mean multiplier effects and things such as that, but those are the main impacts. It's not numbers of brochures, workshops produced. The funders could care less about that. They care about these two metrics, and that was not an easy thing for any of us to address the first couple of years, but as you'll see later, Tristan and colleagues have done a phenomenal job with impact. So that's an overview of what got us to the last couple of years. Show you this quick map. I know it's kind of small to read things, but the shaded area is where Harvest New York has been during the last 2 years. The yellow dots that you see, those are the places where Harvest New York specialists, there's 4 people involved. They really make up 3 positions altogether. Though they're linked solidly with faculty here on campus, they're housed in those various counties that you see the yellow dots. So that's what Western New York or Harvest New York has been as a pilot program in locations. In terms of structure, this chart shows how, in general, it's structured. In the middle column are the 4 Harvest New York specialists in Western New York, Tristan, Beth, Cheryl, and Elizabeth. In the left column is the faculty that work very closely with Tristan and her colleagues. And then in the right column, this idea that that whole team works with the production end of things. Now, just because of the reality of formatting, I couldn't fit a 4th column in. Reality is local associations play a big part of this as well. If you ask any of those folks up there, you know, one of the hallmarks of a good team is that you've got to have folks that know the farmers on the ground, and that's a real key role that the local association educators play, is that they work principally with the production teams who then work with the Harvest New York specialists who are working with faculty, and there's other paths that works. But please don't read into it just because you don't see the local associations. The reality is it's very dynamic. There's cross paths that go on in Harvest New York and with local associations. But this is the best way we could depict at least the new element of Harvest New York.
Okay, so with that, we are going to turn it over to Tristan, is that right?
Yeah, so I'll wrap up this part of mine just to say, as we're juggling some chairs and technology on this end, that you know, that's where Harvest New York has come from. What Tristan's going to take us through is more of what does it really look like in terms of program effort. So Tristan?
Okay, so my focus has been the dairy foods processing aspect. So I know there was a couple questions on gleaning and a couple other very specific distribution. those would be good questions for both Cheryl and Elizabeth Newbold, who's not on here today, but I can talk a little bit to the dairy foods processing industry. So I'll talk a little bit about the New York dairy industry growth, the needs of a growing industry, and some of the projects that I've been working on, and then I'll also put in a little discussion on how I made these, the impacts that I have. Okay, so first of all, New York, in 2012, we were #4 in terms of raw milk production, but as of a couple weeks ago, we just found out that New York has overtaken the #3 spot again in terms of milk production. So this was just announced by the governor's office, I think 2 weeks ago now, that in 2013 we overtook Idaho, who was #3, and now we are #3, so that's very exciting for us. We're #1, as of 2012, we're #1 in yogurt production, which is one reason that I've been working so hard with these yogurt manufacturers in New York, because we've been growing pretty tremendously. We have a lot of new yogurt manufacturers here in New York. We're also the #1 producer of cottage cheese, which not a lot of people realize. We produce about 28% of U.S. production here in New York. So New York, I kind of look at it as a culture state because we produce a lot of cultured dairy products, yogurt and cottage cheese being 2 of those. And then we're also #5 in cheese production. So we have a great New York dairy industry here. So this map I like to show because it shows some of the processors in New York State that are new or growing or expanding. So as you can see, if you take a look at this map, the stars, there's a lot of stars on the left-hand side of the state, the Western New York part of the state. And those are a lot of new dairy processors. So in Genesee County, we have 3 new or growing dairy processors, Alpena being new, Mueller Quaker, which is a joint venture with PepsiCo out in Western New York, and then Yancey's Fancies is almost tripling the size of their plant. They make the artisan cheese that everybody sees in Wegmans stores. So they're tripling the size of their plant, and that's supposed to come online within the next year. And we also have Leprino Foods. They're a company that's kind of on the border of Pennsylvania in Tioga County, and they actually aren't considered a New York processor since they are, their plant is literally right on the border. So, but they have made quite a substantial investment. They make all the cheese for companies such as Papa John's or Pizza Hut, et cetera. And then we have Upstate Farms, which is growing substantially. Steuben Foods, which not a lot of people realize, but they bring in a ton of milk and process it and make things such as baby formula or organic, those organic milks that come in those small packs. And they're kind of hidden under the radar because you never see their branded products out there, but they make a ton of stuff. And then OACA, which actually I don't have on this map, they're another company that has expanded tremendously in Genesee County, and they do a lot of work on, they'll make the Starbucks drinks that, for example, come in those glass bottles. So things that you might not even realize made right here in New York. So it's really exciting. And then, of course, we have Chobani and Faye. Faye is expanding right now. So it's really exciting. And then we have the new plant in Cayuga County called Cayuga Milk Ingredients, and they're going to be doing some very unique stuff, making dairy protein powders for export. So they should be coming online within the next couple of months here. So working with them also. And then we have the DFA plant. A group of farmers got together and wanted to start processing milk in Livingston County. So a tremendous growth in terms of dairy processing in New York State, and this is not even all of them. I just selected the ones that I'm most familiar with.
And you can see that colleagues across the state here are going, well, how about me? Look.
Yes, and I see some of the chats. Empire Specialty Cheese, yes. they're definitely growing, and Hudson Valley Fresh, yep, I'm very familiar with them. I'm personally not working with all of them because my time is limited. There's only one of me, but I am familiar with all of those companies that are listed up there. So.
And I'll jump in here, and beyond just the time, because Tristan already works about 23 and a half hours a day, the reality is the funding source is limited. It says Western New York.
Yeah.
We'll get into more of that later on, but please, it's really kind of gratifying to know that we're going in the right direction as you suggest. Well, wait a minute, what about me? So keep that coming. We'd love to hear those comments of, we know about this, or there's a new effort that's just being talked about. Throw that in the chat. That really helps us out, and you'll see why in a little while.
Yeah, and if you do have companies that I haven't listed up here and you think they would benefit from our support, definitely contact me, and hopefully I can fit it in and see what we can do for them also. So these are just some examples, definitely not all-inclusive. And then just to show this map, this is a map that I took. This is artisan cheese companies in New York State. If you were to look at this map about 5 years ago, not many of these push buttons would have existed. So we're seeing a tremendous growth in artisan cheese production, which is amazing. And we're working with a lot of these artisan cheese producers, and it's just amazing to see their growth. So they struggle a lot with getting their products into market, so we're supporting them on that. And my focus hasn't been too much on artisan producers, but like I said, my time is limited, so I can't do it all. But I try to support them if there is a specific need that they're looking for. But again, it's amazing to see this growth. If you were to speak to people in the New York State Department of Ag and Markets, they are overwhelmed with the amount of artisan producers. They have to go in and inspect these facilities every 90 days, and the inspectors are quite overwhelmed with how many artisan producers there are. So it's exciting. We're starting to adopt that European model of artisan cheese production, so it's really exciting, but it does present a lot of challenges, which I'll talk about.
Okay, so a quick aside, how would one find a map of just artisan cheese or other kinds of ag products? Because I bet that might be interesting to some of the folks that are. This is
a map that I actually, I worked with the Small Farms, Cornell Small Farms program, and they actually have this map on their website.
Okay.
So if somebody is interested in seeing this map.
Or others like it, they might have something like that.
Yeah.
So Small Farms program. Okay,
yep.
Great. Sorry, just had to jump in there because that's pretty cool.
So this is definitely courtesy of this Cornell Small Farms program, and we have done a little bit of work with the Small Farms program. I have done a little bit of work with the Small Farms program. Okay, so I get a lot of questions from a lot of county extension people, what is Greek yogurt? So I want to clarify what Greek yogurt is. In 1998, Fage, which is a company that now owns a plant in Johnstown, New York, they were the first company to begin bringing strained yogurt into the United States. Fage is a Greek company, which is how the term Greek yogurt came about. And then in 2005, Hamdi Ulukaya, who is the CEO of Chobani, bought an old craft plant in New Berlin, New York, and he kind of wanted to start making strained yogurt as well. And Chobani has exploded, as you probably are well aware. They're awesome at marketing, but a lot of people think they were the first to market. They were not the first to market. Fage was. So they both produce excellent products, and if you haven't tried them, I highly urge it. Now, there is a lot of questions on what exactly Greek yogurt is. So I just want to clarify to everybody out there, yogurt does have a standard of identity. What a standard of identity is the FDA says if you want to label your product yogurt, you have to comply with these certain regulations. If anybody's interested, I can show you that regulation, but it is under the Food and Drug Administration Code of Federal Regulations. So there is a standard of identity for yogurt. As for Greek yogurt, there is not a standard of identity. So I just want to clarify that there really isn't anything out there that says Greek yogurt has to be made this way or Greek yogurt has to possess this nutritional balance. But in the minds of consumers, they have termed Greek yogurt to mean something that is higher protein, maybe less lactose. So something higher protein, you know, you get more protein in the same amount of volume of yogurt. So that's kind of how consumers perceive Greek yogurt. There are a few different ways of making Greek yogurt. There's the straining process, which you make yogurt, or you go and buy plain yogurt in your grocery store, buy a Wegmans brand of plain yogurt. And if you put that yogurt through a cheesecloth, and you'll see a lot of liquid come out, and that concentrated portion that remains in the cheesecloth is considered the strained yogurt. And it takes about 4 pounds of milk to make 1 pound of this type of yogurt. But then you're going to have this Greek yogurt whey that is left over. So if you open up a plain yogurt container in your grocery that you buy from your local grocery store, and you see that liquid portion at the top, that has been removed through the straining process. So that is how that's how companies like Fage and Chobani make their yogurt, among many others. But there are other ways to make what's commonly known as Greek yogurt. You can take that water out of milk before you add the culture, and that doesn't result in any Greek yogurt whey. So some companies have done that. Another thing is fortification, so adding that protein back into the yogurt to build up that protein level. So there are many different ways of making Greek yogurt. Everybody thinks that the FDA is going to step in and try to develop a standard of identity. Me, personally, I don't foresee that happening because I don't believe the FDA wants to regulate how processes are done to create a product when there's already a broad enough definition that these products already fall into. So there has been some lawsuits out there on what Greek yogurt is, but I don't see any changes. FDA really hasn't stepped up to the plate to make any type of standard of identity for Greek yogurt. So I just wanted to clarify what it is. And if you have further questions, feel free to contact me.
And I'll jump in. One of the reasons why Tristan added a couple of slides about Greek yogurt is we were talking this morning was just a note that we had quite a few educators that were nutrition educators, and we thought that a little discussion about yogurt and Greek yogurt might be of interest. So I think they can follow up with you after if they have additional questions. Is that right? Or if you have a question you want to add in the chat, just so we know that it exists, that would be great. So, and you're gonna talk a little bit more about the workforce development and that sort of thing at this point.
Yeah. So, yeah, Greek yogurt has been a lot of focus because we produce so much here in New York, but so that's why. I also get a lot of questions on how the yogurt boom in New York has affected pricing that farmers are paid. So this is a document that comes out of Chautauqua County every month. So I'd like to credit Ginny Carlberg for this, but this just shows you Class 1 is milk that goes into fluid milk, so milk that you buy at the grocery store. Class 2 goes into yogurt and manufactured products. Class 3 is cheese, and Class 4 is dairy products, or dry dairy products. So farmers are, it's a little bit more complicated than this, but farmers are paid on a pooled price, a blended price. So if more milk goes into fluid milk, their milk checks might be a little bit higher. Fluid milk consumption has gone down quite a bit over the past actually 40 years. So if you take a look at the December utilization, that's the amount of milk that falls into these classes here in New York, in the Northeast. The Class 1, that's 38%, so 38% of the milk in the Northeast goes towards fluid milk. milk that you buy at the grocery store, Wegmans brand, Upstate Farms, any other, Gorillic, any other type of brand. A couple of years ago, that number was up to 44%, so quite a drop in fluid consumption. But we're making that up by producing more yogurt here in New York. So New York, we're sucking up a lot of fluid milk into the Class 2 market. So just gives you a little understanding of how milk pricing works. And I'm not an expert, but I do get a lot of questions on that because of the yogurt boom in here in New York. So now just a little bit about what I specifically do. My first month on this job was kind of going out and identifying needs for the dairy foods processing industry. So a lot of their concerns are complying with the new Food and Drug Administration regulations. If anybody remembers, in 2011, President Obama signed new regulations into law that pertain to food safety. So he did a complete overhaul of the food safety system, and a lot of these new processors are going to have to comply with these new FDA regulations, and there's a lot of ambiguity about what that means. So that's definitely a concern. Workforce needs. So we're seeing, as I showed you earlier, we're seeing such a boom in terms of a workforce in dairy foods processing. So how do we train people so that they can go into these facilities and work and produce healthy and safe products that don't make people sick? So that's a huge need. And I work on that on a daily basis. We can't find enough people to fill these positions. What do we do about that? Byproduct concerns. So as I mentioned, Greek yogurt, you have a lot of Greek yogurt whey that comes from that. What can we do with that Greek yogurt whey? Can we add value to it? You know, the cheese industry 30 years ago, they were making a lot of cheese, and as a result, they had a lot of whey left over. They found a way to make that valuable, and now a lot of cheese makers are making cheese just so they can have the whey because the whey is more valuable. Can the Greek yogurt industry do the same thing? So that was another concern. Available markets. Can we, if we're an artisan producer, can we ship our products easier, access new markets, be able to market our cheese a little bit better? And, of course, making sure that we have a high-quality milk supply. That's another need for the dairy industry. Okay, so I'm going to skip over this slide because Paul already talked about it. But just a little bit about workforce development. I actually worked with Genesee Community College on developing a curriculum for a 2-year degree program in food processing technology. And I worked with them on obtaining a grant so they could get this program up and started, and they obtained about $239,000 to get this program up and going. And it should be starting next fall. So hopefully fall 2014, we'll have a new 2-year degree program so that we can educate people to go into food processing. I also worked with ECC on developing a curriculum for a 10-month certificate program in food processing. So people can go through this 10-month certificate program and be hired. And then also I work with the Dairy Foods Extension team. They have a certificate program, and they do workshops, and we're working on bringing those workshops to locations off-site. So bringing them directly to processors. And then I'm also working with the Western New York Agribusiness Academy that's run through BOCES. I worked with them on developing the food processing portion. So we are really excited that we're training high schoolers about food processing careers. And then I'm also working with other SUNY schools on implementing that coursework.
So one of the questions that was just chatted in privately was asking if the slides are going to be available. So both the presentation and the slides will be available after this session is over.
Okay. Yeah, so as for workforce development initiatives, last year we sent almost 400 people through our dairy processing specific workshops, both on campus and off campus. And a lot of these people were entering or looking to enter into the dairy processing industry. So if a lot of you recall, Kodak laid off a lot of employees a couple years ago. A lot of these employees that were laid off are looking for positions in other areas. So I worked with them on training them so they could work in food processing plants. And we offer our certificate in fluid milk processing, fermented dairy products, and cheese products. The way I did that is I worked with a lot of these community colleges, met one-on-one with them, and making good connections with local community colleges, and working with local economic development agencies to get these programs up and going, and work with government officials too, so that they understand what's going on, that there is a need out there, and that these SUNY schools, that Cornell is working with these community colleges on getting these programs up and going. Okay, and another need is high quality milk. So I worked with the Dairy Foods Extension Group on applying for a grant through the New York Farm Viability Institute, and we're going to take a look at what are some farm-level quality issues that impact finished product quality. So one of those things is looking at spores that enter raw milk on the farm. They survive processing and cause issues in the finished product. One of those issues, for example, is if a spore enters raw milk at the farm level, it'll survive pasteurization. It's used to make cheese. Those spores will cause the cheese to blow up, and that cheese is now unsellable. And it's a huge issue. People don't know about it, but it's a huge issue to the cheese industry. So that's one of the projects that I'm working on. So I coordinated with people on campus and with farmers and cooperatives on understanding what the issue was, and we applied for the grant and obtained it. Okay, and then byproduct control. I actually developed kind of what is like a program work team on working with many different departments within Cornell who are interested in looking at what we can do with Greek Yogurt Whey. So one of the things I worked on is Proliant is a company that wants to take Greek Yogurt Whey and process it into other ingredients. So I worked with them on making connections throughout New York State with companies who are actually producing Greek Yogurt Whey, and they recently announced that they're investing $30 million into a facility here in New York, and they're going to be processing that Greek Yogurt Whey into other ingredients for its export market. So they already have a patent on the process, and Proliant is a company that's very well known in other areas, and we're really excited that they're going to be a new company here in New York. Also, taking a look at further research, we're going to try to receive a portion of this $500,000 from the governor's budget to evaluate potential uses on Greek Yogurt Whey, and I'm coordinating with Animal Science, the Cornell Waste Management Institute, the Biological Environmental Engineering, and Food Science to develop a comprehensive research plan to look at further Greek Yogurt Whey uses. So I'll skip over that because we're getting short on time, but future projects that I'm going to be working on is bringing new companies to Western and Upstate New York, working with artisan producers to create more outlets for their product, and expanding our program to other areas of the state, and address the growing needs of other industries such as brewing, food hubs, and artisan cheese. So just a little bit about campus connections. I have a faculty advisor on campus that I work very closely with. His name is Martin Weidman out of Food Science. I speak with him on probably a daily basis. I think it's important to have a good faculty advisor. He gives me ideas of what they're doing on campus in terms of research, and I'm working on trying to get bring that research off-site. So Martin has a lot of good ideas, and I try to carry those ideas through. I have bi-weekly conference calls with him. I travel to campus. I'm on campus probably at least one day a week. In fact, this week I'm on campus almost all week, and I'm meeting with a lot of faculty members. So I also work very closely with on-campus organizations like the Dairy Foods Extension Program. We have a newsletter also. The Dairy Foods Extension Program has a newsletter. So if you're interested in receiving that, newsletter, I'd be glad to put you on that listserv. I also work very closely with the Milk Quality Improvement Program, which is a lab here on campus. And communication and networking, I'm on the road all the time. If there are people from Genesee County on this call, they know that I'm never in the office, and they wonder if I exist because I am never in the office. I'm always working on meeting people and traveling all over the place, trying to network and make sure that what I'm providing and what I'm doing is beneficial to the industry.
Well, super. Thank you, Tristan. So, Tristan mentioned kind of like a PWT, because we were talking a little bit about ways to build campus-county networks and connections, and so stay tuned on that one. Maybe there'll be some other opportunities for folks who are interested in the WAY issue to get involved and learn some more. So stay tuned, and if somebody wants to be what is your email address? Maybe I don't think that we had promoted that. I can send that out to everybody, but maybe you can put it in the chat box.
Yeah, I will do that.
And if anybody wants to be involved or get on the listserv for the Dairy Food newsletter, then they can contact you with that. That was great. Wonderful. So we're going to switch back over to Paul to wrap up this presentation.
So let's switch this between PowerPoints here. I'll just comment that you can tell because of time here that we could easily have Beth Dahl, Cheryl Harper, Judd Reed, and Elizabeth Newbaltz have similar but different stories in the various areas that they work in as Harvest New York specialists, and very different outcomes, but yet they still have a powerful story that you just heard from Tristan. So, though Tristan is not the Harvest New York, she's one of. Reality was we didn't have time to have everybody. There's similar stories that we could talk about in later webinars from the rest of the Harvest New York team. But as we start to wrap down here on the hour, questions have come in, and it's exactly where we're going to wrap up with. So what now? Where are we going? We did put a proposal in to the governor's office to try and first sustain Harvest New York in Western New York at the tune of $300,000, which is what we've gotten in the past few years, and then expand Harvest New York statewide, and that'd take another $700,000. So we put in a request to the governor for $1 million to expand Harvest New York statewide, with the idea that we would have upwards of a total of 11 specialists sort of regionally employed in the various regions across the state, but then also available as a statewide team. So Tristan mentioned, what about some of those dairy processing plants that aren't in Western New York? And the concept would be she'd spend most of her time in Western New York, but be able to work with those folks from other parts of the state. Same type of thing with maybe we hire somebody in Artisan Cheese for the Hudson Valley, but then they can answer questions and provide resources in other parts of the state. That's the concept we put before the governor. It did not get into the governor's budget. However, we're going, just in the past 2 years, to the legislature to pitch the same exact proposal. And the other thing is we've added a couple of new areas, which I affectionately refer to as kind of the farm brewery initiative that you see there with wineries and hard ciders and hops and all kinds of good things. Reality is the governor didn't put it in his budget. We were feeling pretty good about that until kind of the property tax issues started to rise. And so now we're going after the legislature pretty aggressively to get not only the $300,000 in Western New York, but expand it statewide. As recently as is Tuesday of this week. We were in Albany talking with legislature, with elected officials to make that happen. So stay tuned to see whether that does happen in the coming budget cycle here that would take effect in April, but that is where we're going with Harvest New York. So with that, we've only got about 4 or 5 minutes left here.
If somebody wants to chat in a question, feel free to, even if it's that we get back to you after the close of this presentation, or there's a final poll up just to kind of get a feeling for folks that whether or not you may have a need or an interest in following up with Harvest New York, and if there's something specific that you're looking for. So, and that poll is just a closing poll for us, for Paul, and for Tristan, and for Harvest New York to know a little bit more about what you might be thinking. So let me check the chat here and see how we're doing. Like I said, any final questions, feel free to add something in there. There's not a space for the final response. Okay, well, I'm sorry. You'll have to chat in questions or follow up with Tristan. I'm not sure why that's not working.
Yeah,
Apologize for that.
Just chat if you have something to say, chat it in the chat box here.
But overall, I really want to thank both of you for being here. It's a beautiful snowy day here in Ithaca. I don't know how it is in the rest of New York State, but I understand that we're going to be getting hit with some snow later today and tomorrow. And I really appreciate having Tristan here in the room. We could have done this certainly long distance, but it's nice to be face to face. So thank you for coming. All right, I think we're going to close up here, and we'll leave the line open if anybody wants to chat in anything. But otherwise, I really thank you for participating today.
Thanks for listening. Oh.